The system didn't end. It adapted. Stop. Before you believe anything you heard about this case, ask yourself one simple question. Why does the story keep changing? Every time it gets close to the truth. A man dies in a high-security cell. Cameras fail, guards fall asleep. Evidence disappears. And somehow, we're told that's the end of the story. But what if that wasn't the end? What if that was the moment the real story began? If you're tired of surface-level explanations, if you want clarity without the sugarcoating, stay with me. Because what we're about to unpack isn't comfortable, but it might explain everything. Before we go deeper, quick challenge. If you believe there's more to this story than what we've been told, drop a comment right now. Look deeper. Let's see how many people are actually paying attention. The official story is always the first one you hear. And it's designed to be the last. We're told this is a closed case. A scandal involving a powerful man who died before justice could be served. The narrative was sealed with a final, definitive statement. Clean. Simple. A tragedy. Yes. But one with a clear beginning, middle, and end. It's a story packaged for easy consumption, designed to close the book and let us all move on. But reality doesn't look like that. It rarely fits into a neat press release. Because when you step back from the headlines, when you ignore the official reassurances, you don't see closure. You see patterns. These aren't random accidents or clerical errors. They are calculated actions. Missing evidence. Delayed disclosures. Carefully managed narratives that redirect public attention. And most importantly, you see silence where there should be outrage. A systemic quiet that is more deafening than any denial. If this was truly over, why are documents still being withheld under obscure exemptions? Why does every release feel incomplete? Like a puzzle with the most crucial pieces deliberately removed. Each redacted page isn't an answer. It's another question. This isn't how finished stories behave. Finished stories are transparent. They can withstand scrutiny. This is how controlled stories behave. They rely on locks, on redactions, on our willingness to accept the simple answer, and stop asking difficult questions. Think about it. The pattern is always the same. Every few weeks, sometimes days, there's a new drop. A sudden, explosive release of information that promises to change everything. We get new documents, new images, new headlines splashed across every screen. It feels like a bombshell. A moment of pure, unfiltered truth breaking through the noise. A manufactured event designed to capture our collective attention, pulling us into a story that feels urgent and vital. And every time, the same predictable cycle begins. First, the initial shock and outrage. Then comes the endless speculation. A whirlwind of theories filling the void. This is the distraction phase, where the conversation is steered away from the core issues. and into a maze of debate and argument. Finally, a creeping silence as the next big story takes over. But after the noise dies down, what actually changes? Nothing. The system remains intact, because the information released is always partial, heavily edited, and carefully framed. It's just enough to keep our attention, to make us feel informed. But it's never enough to deliver clarity or empower real action. That's not transparency. That's information management. And when information is managed, it's no longer about revealing the truth. It's about controlling the narrative. It's about control. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because if this isn't just about one man, then what is it about? Let's look at this logically. When powerful individuals across finance, politics, and entertainment all intersect in one network, that's not coincidence. That's structure. And structures don't disappear. They evolve and adapt. So, was this ever about one individual? Or was he just part of something larger? Because systems like this don't rely on one person. They rely on access, leverage, and influence. And once those exist, they don't just vanish. Let's talk about something people often overlook. Something that operates in the shadows of public discourse. Behavior. Not allegations. Not headlines. Just raw, observable behavior. We're setting aside the noise of accusation to focus on the quiet signals. The patterns that emerge when you look at actions instead of just words. It's a different kind of evidence. One that doesn't require a verdict, but demands our attention. When large financial settlements happen quietly, sealed from public view. When transactions raise eyebrows among insiders but result in no official charges. That doesn't automatically prove wrongdoing. The absence of a conviction is not, in itself, proof of innocence. It simply means the threshold for legal consequence wasn't met. But it does raise a different, more fundamental question. Why resolve something quietly if there's nothing to hide? And more importantly, why do certain situations lead to public consequences, while other, similar ones seem to dissolve into carefully managed silence? That's not about individuals. That's about how systems, by their very design, respond under pressure. It's about the mechanisms of information control, and who has the power to deploy them. Cites Part 5. Redactions and delays, what they signal. Now let's look at the mechanics. Redactions. Delays. Missed deadlines. Public promises of transparency, followed by partial releases. Individually, each one can be explained. But together, they form a pattern. And patterns tell stories. Because when transparency is consistently delayed, it suggests something simple. The information isn't just sensitive. It's strategic. Let me ask you something. And I want you to answer honestly. Do you believe A. Everything important has already been revealed? B. We've only seen a fraction of the full picture? Comment A or B right now. Because your answer says a lot about how you see the world. And don't forget, hit like if you want more deep dives like this. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Power doesn't just exist in actions. It exists in what people are allowed to know. Because controlling information is often more effective than controlling people. If you can shape perception, you don't need force. You don't need pressure. You just need direction. And that's why narratives matter. Because once a narrative is accepted, even if it's incomplete, most people stop asking questions. Notice how the story never fully disappears. But it never fully resolves either. It just lingers. That's not accidental. That's a loop. Release just enough information. Trigger public reaction. Shift attention. Repeat. And while everyone debates the latest detail, the bigger picture stays untouched. Because attention is finite. And distraction is powerful. Everyone keeps asking, what happened? But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the better question is, what is still happening? Because if the conditions that allowed it exist, then the potential for repetition exists too. And systems don't dismantle themselves. Let's be clear. We're not here to accuse individuals. We're not here to jump to conclusions. Because speculation without evidence is just noise. But asking questions? That's not dangerous. That's necessary. Especially when the answers remain incomplete. So, what do we actually know? We know information has been released. But not fully. Timelines have been inconsistent. Transparency has been promised. But delayed. And we know this. When something this significant remains unresolved for this long, it's not because people aren't looking. It's because something is resisting clarity. So here we are. Years later. Still asking questions. Still waiting for answers. Still watching a story that refuses to end. And maybe that's the point. Because as long as the story feels unfinished, people stay engaged. But they also stay divided. And that divided attention is a resource. One that's easy to manage. So, I'll leave you with this. The truth isn't always hidden. Sometimes, it's just never fully shown. Are you satisfied with fragments? Or do you want the full picture? If this made you think, share this video. Awareness only spreads when we're willing to look deeper. Subscribe for more content like this. And in the comments, tell me, what do you think is still missing from this story? Because this system didn't end. It adapted. Please subscribe, like, and share to help us bring more eye-opening and educational content to you.